we're going to jump in and get started. I've got Angela co-presenting with me this morning. And by the way, we have the magical Kate Faust in the background who's going to put us into breakout sessions later and who's admitting people along the way. So thank you for being with us, Kate. So this month was the COACHN model. And, you know, people use the term coaching a lot, right? Great sales managers are coaches. Great leaders are coaches. The hallmark of a coach is someone who asks versus tells, right? That self-discovery is the key to lasting behavior change. And the COACHN model is here to help us be that way more consistently. I want to share a stat with you guys. Our friends at Bridge Group and Exec Vision did a study a few years back. And it said that managers are saying, right, the majority, they're coaching between 3 and 6 hours a rep a month. But less than half of their reps actually agreed with that statistic. So there's a mismatch, right? There's an inherent misunderstanding and a gap that's here. And I think that part of the gap is that there's also a kind of inherent misunderstanding in how we use the term coaching, right? There's call coaching, which is skill coaching, which isn't, I'm talking about deals, which isn't, I'm talking about how you did last month. It isn't a one-on-one. It's, we're going to listen to a live or recorded call and talk about your skills. It's a one-on-one up to 3-on-1. Anything more, it's a training, right? The individual walks out with customized individual feedback on their performance on the call. Then there's performance coaching, and that certainly is a one-on-one, right? That certainly could be drive-bys in the hall. That's you doing your job, helping everybody get better, but doing it in that coach manner, doing it with asking and self-discovery versus telling. And then of course there's performance counseling, which is, we got to have a come to Jesus meeting here, right? And we can use coaching and asking questions and the COACHN model in that as well. So I think the reason there's that big gap in the previous slide is that people are using coaching differently. As managers, we're interacting with our teams, right? And we're asking questions and we're being great leaders and we're doing it a ton with every person. I touch them, I meet with them 3 to 6 hours every month, but the reps aren't feeling coached. And that's where the COACHN model can help. So COACHN model is a framework and you can use it for all the meetings. Now, since I know everybody took the class, memorized it, applied it like crazy every day for the last 3 weeks, why don't we open up our chat buttons and you guys can help me remember what each of the steps stand for. C. What's the first step? Clarify. Booyah. You got it. Clarifying expectations. Oh, you got to be a fast typer around here. Yes. Daniel, sorry. Observed behavior. Exactly. Here's what I saw. Nice. A. Oh, you're ready. All right. Let's see if anybody can beat Daniel on the first to it. C. We cannot. He's so ready. He's just ready to hit enter. Committing to the action items. Thank you. H. Really quick. N. This is fun. All right. Let's hear it in action. Angela, you take over here. We're gonna. What's our scenario? What are you leading?
I am coaching you about the intros that you've been doing on your calls.
All right, cool. So we're doing a skill coaching or call coaching. All right, manager starts.
Okay, so LB, last time you and I met, we worked a little bit on your intros. So I know we have a few calls scored and I just want to take a few minutes to see how you're improving.
Cool. All right, let's do this.
Cool. So when reviewing those calls, I noticed that you have been using your new intros quite often when you're on your calls.
Yeah. It took a little while to get there, but it's working for me.
Good. So how is it going? What do you think?
I think honestly it's working. I'd like to get to the point where I can customize it a bit more, but I'm keeping people on the phones longer.
That's good. So you're seeing some reactions from your customers?
I am, and I think I'm getting more people to stay on with me longer.
That's awesome. So is there anything at this point that you think you want to tweak or any ways you think you can improve it to keep that conversation going?
I just need to keep building my confidence in it, to be honest. And I'd like to get to the point where I can customize it a little bit, like I said. So it's not just saying the same kind of generic value each time, but quickly being able to modify it when I'm calling people.
Okay. So what do you think will help you do that?
Well, just getting more comfortable trying different values in the intros, I think. I've been using everything about saving time, but maybe if I practice some of the different versions.
Okay. Yeah. Do you want to do a quick role play?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Insert role play here.
Okay, that sounded great. I want you to keep working on it and stay focused. Why don't we meet again in 2 weeks and you bring a call, I'll bring a call, we'll review them together. How does that sound?
Perfect.
Good. So I can expect for you to send me an invite by the end of the day
Yeah, let's do that.
for that
This
meeting.
time work for you?
Yeah, that works.
All right, here we go. Booyah! The coaching model in action. Not rocket science, right, you guys? Not rocket science. I'm loving to hear feedback. Angela, I know that tell everybody about the experience in Girls Club with the coaching model.
Yeah, so I know Lauren mentioned it before, but I'm the program director for our Girls Club, the 6-month certification program for women looking to grow in sales. So we take them through some of these management courses. And when surveyed, this course hands down won by a landslide. They just really loved it, really felt that no matter where they were in their career, because some of them are aspiring managers or new managers, they really felt like it helped them have better, deeper conversations. Even some of them used it more along the lines when they were having some of their sales calls. So they just figured out that it fit in so well to give a structure for a call.
I'd love to hear who's tried it. Raise your hand on those reactions, like a clap or a thumbs up, if this is something you've tried, or maybe it was even before the model, or if you've tried it out since taking the training. So I'm looking for a thumbs up. Brian's got an actual hand up.
Brian raised his hand.
Brian, Bernicia. Anybody else? Let me invite you two off mute. Talk to me about your experience. Brian, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think a lot of, for me, was too much telling and less asking, right? And I think this kind of really brought that back to the forefront. Specifically speaking to my other director, Eric, who's on the call as well too, is like too many times we're telling, expecting them to think and tell them what they should be doing and how they should be doing it, right? Whereas asking a lot more questions as far as like how we teach our sales process and doing it with them, it gets them to be a little bit more onus, us, just taking more responsibility themselves as well too. And it sparks better conversation too, instead of like a yes, no, or kind of like,
Yeah, sure. What's the benefit of that when they're taking more ownership and talking more?
Well, for me, it's an actionable item for me. Like we can continue to work on those things, where I'm recording them and they're telling me things instead of me telling them what to do, as far as I'm concerned, and maybe they're realizing some of the things themselves. They're telling me what their issues are instead of me telling them what their issues are.
Yeah, yeah. Have they matched up? You know how sometimes you're focused, especially in call coaching, you're like, oh, this over here, I have to focus on it. Are they coming up with the same things that you were thinking?
A little bit, not as much as I thought.
Yeah, yeah. That always surprises me a little bit too. Bernicia,
And
tell
that
us
helps
about.
when you have that model, right? It helps you to, and they learn consistency. They kind of learn that there's a rhythm to your conversations. That can help kind of get you on the same page too, because they come into it knowing a little bit about how you're going to ask or what you're going to ask, or that you're going to ask questions instead of just walking into your office or coming up to your desk and telling. And they kind of naturally start to become more prepared for those conversations. And ultimately that raises the quality of the conversation.
We do a great job of that when reps come to us for pricing discounts and things of that sort. So that expectation, all right, and that rhythm is they're expecting what we're going to say back to them. I'm just trying to implement that more into kind of, like you said, the one-on-one coaching, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian, have you been using it more in call coaching and like performance one-on-ones? What meetings?
More of my weekly one-on-ones. Yeah.
Good. Cool. Good rhythm. How about you, Bernicia?
Um, I used it actually this morning for rough one-on-ones that I had with my team. And Brian took the words right out of my mouth. I think it really helped with the asking questions. And if I lead with the questions, then they're already going to answer the things I'm going to talk to them about. And so when it's time to talk to them about it, it's an easier conversation because they just told me what they should be doing. And then if they're not doing it, you know, they can see it now. They're like, oh, wait, like, okay, I get it now. So it's definitely been helpful for me.
I'm so glad to hear it. That's cool. I think that's, remember how we were talking last time we were talking about the role as a sales leader and how, especially as new leaders, like we want to be everything to everybody and we want to own it all. And so sometimes us doing all the talking isn't because, you know, we think we're the biggest expert in the room. It's because we're trying to help so much, right? But when we let them do the work, it's sort of like we've been fighting going upstream this whole time. And when we let them do the work, it's like, just turn it around and letting us go with the flow. It's easier to do it that way.
Sometimes it feels like it's a shortcut to just tell them, right? To make that conversation go faster. But long-term, since it's not sticking as well, or they don't have that same buy-in, you find yourself having that conversation over and over again. Whereas if you get the buy-in on the front end, you hopefully don't have to continue having the exact same conversation.
Bingo. Angela, the Women and Girls Club shared that they wound up using the coaching model in all kinds of different ways as well. Can you share some of that?
Well, so they were using it sometimes with peers, right? So being able to have a conversation without it being like, oh, I'm your boss, because they're not. So they could kind of ask some questions and gain an understanding from them, but then also maybe share some ideas. They used it with their boss, right? So that's another untraditional way to use it, to get on the same page again, without having to tell somebody. You want to make sure that they understand that, that it's a two-way conversation, but sometimes your boss can come to a conclusion and get some buy-in, in a way that you were hopeful for. They also used it for, like coaching sessions with obviously their team members, and you know, we did a lot of role playing and things like that, so they were able to incorporate it there as well.
Cool. Very cool. I'm going to stop my share really quick because I want to be able to type in. We're going to talk about some tips for each step. Let me make this a little bit bigger. And we'll go back to the share and see if that's working. I'm just going to go right over here to screen 2. Everybody see that okay?
There it is. Yep.
All right, cool. Let's talk about some tips for execution. So I know we haven't had a lot of people try this out yet. So I'm going to lean heavily on Brian, Angela, and Bernicia. This first step, in fact, let me start with this, guys. Does it need to go in order? I see a couple head nods on, yeah, no, probably not. Certainly the C does make sense up front, right? And the first tip I'm going to start with on this, and it's keep it short, right? If we get hung up in the, well, we're here today to talk about, it's sort of kind of the blah, 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 and the background is, it's like, hey, let's review your calls. It's as simple as that. It can get complex when we're sometimes with peers or bosses, right? Like, I'd like to talk to you about how that meeting went. Like, this is it. This is what we're talking about. The clarification can almost be the purpose of the meeting. Now, any other, anything else can honestly just go in any order, right? It can be the C-O, C, A, O-A, O-A, A-A, H-N. So don't feel like you have to read a script through this. Just check off in your head, yep, I've done all the steps. Any other tips for execution on this C?
I mean, for me, it was just having notes from the
Cool. Bernicia, we've got a little problem with the audio, but guys, I can translate that and repeat it. One of the best ways you can do this is by looking at what you covered last time, right? Last time we were talking about X, Y, and Z. Let's follow that up, right? Or X, Y, Z was important to you, or whatever the case may be. So that's where you just check your quick notes so that you're on track. I gotcha. Yeah, I thought that's where you're going. That's great. All right. O for observed behavior. Angela, Brian, any tips for executing this?
None at all.
Pretty simple, huh?
This one, no, this has been a tougher one for me.
Has it been?
Yeah.
The O, the model itself or the O part?
The O part.
Ah, tell us more.
I think it's important when you're observing behavior to be consistent, right? So you can't observe behavior one way one week and then the next week you observe it in a different way. You have to be consistent in the way in which you're looking at your reps and the way that you're communicating with your reps, so that they have an understanding coming in what that expectation really is.
Can you give us an example, Eric?
Oh, you would.
I know, super on the spot, right? I agree with you 100%, but if you haven't, it's still up here in the theory for me.
Yeah, so
give me a hypothetical if you want.
All right, so if you're talking with a rep about, you know, how they intro a call and this is what's super important to you this week, and then the next week you're talking about and you're like, well, the intro is not that important, but you know, I want you to make sure you're getting to this, and so then you're providing inconsistent,
Gotcha.
Yeah, inconsistent coaching really, and so they're like, wait a minute, I thought this was important, and now we're over here. It's kind of like that, you know, okay, everybody over here now. Oh, wait, we got to address this over here. And if you're always going between here and there, the rep never knows which way to go, right?
Yes.
So if you can kind of establish those rails and let them kind of wind in between those rails and be consistent with that, then you know, I think you'll get better, more consistent feedback.
100%.
I think so too. And I think that keeping the observation, just that, an observation, right? So I'll use the example of like attendance, right? You're addressing an attendance issue and you observe that they've been late regularly or that they've missed time and they don't have PTO to cover it or something along those lines. You don't go into the next steps of saying like, what you think that means, or you're not projecting anything at that point. It's just the observation, right? Because then you're going to get to the next part where you start digging into the why and all of those things. And so keep the observation just that simple, only what you've observed and not trying to bring anything else into that. Yes,
I'm going to take it a step further because I've screwed this up before, right? I think that when you're moving fast, and you're smarter than the average bear, you're kind of like you're 10 steps down the road already, and you have to slow it down a little bit here, especially when it's a performance counseling conversation, like Angela said, right? When you're observing behavior, you got to leave it at the behavior, not the intention, not the feeling, not the meaning, not the anything else deeper underneath, right? I noticed that you screamed on the floor yesterday, and that the spit flying from your mouth got several people very wet. Could you tell me what was happening? Right, so you keep it on observed behaviors. I'll tell you another tip I have for this section is here's where you start layering in the positive. So let me share with you guys that when we do call coaching training for managers, we do many sessions of call coaching training because they're tough behaviors to move. I'm a horrible call coach. I'm just going to admit to that. Most past sellers are. One of the biggest behaviors that's tough to move after we get them asking more questions is to be more positive. We want to fix everything and we want to save the deal instead of focusing on helping that rep self-discover and improve. I always say coach the rep, not the deal. But the true goal at the end of any call coaching, if we're honest with ourselves, is that your rep walk out feeling like a freaking superhero, right? Like that's when they make great calls, not when they feel like, oh, I got so much to learn, when they're like, I'm fantastic, Get me the phones, right? And so as leaders, this is our time to pump them up, and O is a great place to do that. So when managers struggle, I give them the tip of get three right away, right? We're working on your intros. I heard you try it every time. Fantastic. You were really consistent in your delivery. You got the decision maker speaking quickly. You sounded confident. I'm really impressed with your efforts. How has it felt for you? Okay. It's going to feel a little heavy on the happy than normal for 90% of the managers I've worked with, and that's okay.
And the
Go
happy,
heavy on the happy.
the happy doesn't have to go with hand in hand with the exact conversation, because you don't want to contradict or take away from what the message is. So again, if I go back to the attendance example, I can talk about, you're doing so great on the floor. You're killing it with your sales. But today we're here to talk about attendance and what's going on there. And so you can, there's always a way to make it positive, to find that positive, and then say, but we gotta talk about this.
Good. All right. How about the A? Tips from anybody. What's key in this part?
So we're obviously asking questions. What kind of questions do we want to ask?
Questions that are relevant to the conversation that we're having. So questions in regards to whatever the expectation is.
I can't get you this time. I think I heard the word relevant, and that's all I caught. Shoot, chat it in.
Emily in the comments, open-ended questions.
Yeah.
Absolutely. This is the sales call piece, right? This is that piece that we all know. Get them talking.
You got it. Most of the time we go past this too quickly. You can see from my notes, right? You want to stay here as long as possible. We want to get them talking and self-discovering. Now, here's another thing that we notice. When you're asking questions, right? We do want to start with open questions, but sometimes we're dying to get them to this point, right? Like, why do you think attendance is important? And they're just all over the place and they're not getting where you need them to go. Has anybody experienced that before? You try to do it with questions and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to be here forever. They're not getting it. All right. So I think of it as the question funnel, just like you teach your reps. You start broad and then you start to get more directive. Okay. If there's something that's like, if you're just ready to have a great call coaching session, you start broad with, how do you think that went? Couldn't be more broad. Now I'm going to show you an example at the other end of the funnel. And I call this leading the witness, Your Honor. And it's the, wouldn't you agree that your calls could be improved by X, Y, and Z, right? I'll tell you what, I never stop just cringing when I hear reps using that as well. I'm just dying to say, no, I wouldn't agree. Even if I would, I feel like they're just setting me up to get it back in their face. So I hear a lot of managers doing that as well. So we want to land somewhere in the middle, right? If it's critical, they discover the point that you're after, start a third of the way down the funnel. If it's not, start higher. Keep going down further. And yes, there are times where they're not going to get it and you're going to have to just go straight back up to the O and tell them what you've observed. Questions or comments about that? Okay. The key to the next part, committing to actions, is getting them to discover the actions and commit to it. How can we do that? Can somebody think of what we can say? What's the line we can say here? No wrong answers.
Could you commit to daily KPIs or something like that, some sort of targets?
Yeah.
Therefore, it's relevant.
Good. Can you commit to X, Y, and Z? Awesome, Mike. Thank you for that. I was going to wait all day till somebody did it. Who's got another one?
Setting up the time frame too for those actions, so it's not just open-ended.
Good tip. Excellent.
I would leave it open, asking them, what can we do to solve this or resolve this or to get XYZ increased?
Christy, I really like that. This is again them self-discovering, right? Well, I guess I could blah, 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 blah. You'll have some people that say, oh, right? And then we can jump in and help. But when they're thinking about it and doing that self-discovery, like we said before, you get much higher engagement and actual follow through. I don't think we can do any better than that. Well done. Thank you. Any other tips or final comments on the C's before we get to H? Why do we do this? I'm switching the question now. Why do we do the H part?
We have to support them. We're their managers, so we're here to help them, train them, guide them. And by asking them, how can I help you? Rather than us saying, we need to role play, and everybody rolls their eyes. Great, we have to role play. But if it's,
Everybody loves a
how
role
can
play.
I help you get better with this? And if they go, I need practice, great. And it gets more of a buy-in.
I think it just helps them understand that you're there for them, right? You're there to support them. You're there to develop them, and that you're there to, help them go from, we call it in our organization, take a B player to an A player. It's my responsibility to help you get there, right? And so I'm not going to dictate how that's going to happen. We got to do this together, and we're on the same team.
Perfect. Yep. Love it. Love it. Love it. And Jeff, I like yours too, right? We've got to provide ideas and help. We're not just there to point out the issues. Nice job, everybody. You got it. I think the next steps are self-explanatory, but I'll tell you, there's some fails here. Fail number one is you forget to do it, right? Which is, to me, again, this is so much like a sales call, isn't it, you guys? Right? How often do reps get to the end and they're supposed to bridge and commit to the next call with the customer, right? And I forget to do it 70% of the time. My CRO's slacking me, get the next call. I'm like, damn it, I forgot again. So it's easy to do that again as a manager, right? This is making sure they're clear, not just on the commitments, but when the follow-up's going to happen. It's key to commit to the follow-up because why is it so important that they see us committing to a follow-up every time?
Keep them accountable for what they committed to.
Mm-hmm. You got it. It's just like our kids, for those of us who have them, right? When we say, if you do that again, you're going to timeout, and they never go to timeout. They learn very quickly that they don't have to do what we've asked them to do. I'll tell you.
I think it also shows that we care and we're not just box checking,
Yeah, I love that point of view. Yeah. Like, I really care about this. Let's look at it again. I love that you brought in the positivity there. Thank you.
I'm invested in your success.
Nice job. Nice job. The other fail point on next steps is us doing everything again. And that's us taking the action items. Okay, great. Well, I'll send you an email with these notes, and then I'll schedule us a follow-up. Let the rep own it all, make it easy, turn and go downstream. Raise your hand if you're guilty of owning all the action items and next steps. Yeah. So we've walked through the model. Hey, I love that you said role play. I think it's time. What do you guys think? Does everybody suddenly have a meeting that they need to get to? Because we're going to role play this sucker. Michael, he's out. Forget about it. Let me get my screen back to sharing, and I'll show us where we're going. So we're going to do a triad role play. Has anybody experienced that before? We love these at Factor 8. We coach the rep as the manager, and then we coach the manager as the leader. So it's a triad, right? In a couple minutes, we're going to go to 2 breakout rooms. We're going to have 3 voluntolds in each room. I'll be showing you a scenario. If you're the rep, if you're the manager, if you're the leader, you're doing the improv exercise. Don't break character, but also let's not let this take 85 minutes by being a squirrely rep. Okay, we're going to rush through some of it just so you have some experience practicing the steps and seeing different steps. So you've got plenty of creative license to assume information that's not in the scenario. Once I show you the scenario, Kate's going to come in and put us into breakout rooms. Okay, it'll take anywhere from 10 to 40 seconds. You'll see a little waiting, and all of a sudden you'll appear in your other breakout room. The roles are either rep, manager, delivering feedback using the coaching model, or leader, also delivering feedback using the coaching model. You'll know if you're voluntold for one of these positions because Angela or myself will chat you. So we're going to randomly pick participants in our group and let them know. Sometimes the chat's funky in the breakout room, which means you're just going to get voluntold out loud. Everybody else also has a role. You're an audience leader, and you will participate in giving both the manager and the leader some feedback. Are there any questions? I don't see people rapidly exiting. Thank you for being brave, especially because a lot of you guys haven't practiced and done this before. We've kept it easy and stayed with call coaching. The scenario is here on the screen. We'll show it again when you get into your breakouts. But we'll go ahead and leave this on screen and we'll meet you in the breakout rooms in just a minute. Kate, we're going to stay on the feedback for a while, okay? In fact, my group doesn't even know, and your group doesn't know who went overall. So we're going to share. We never got to our audience leaders.
We were just starting that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what a great opportunity for us to share some what went well and ideas for improvement. Even if you just got an idea for improvement of how you would use it, doesn't mean that your manager or leader did it wrong, right? It's okay to share general ideas for improvement here as well. And we've got time to spend about 5 minutes here. So Angela, what's something that you and your group noticed went well? And then follow up with some tips you want to share or others can share on the constructive, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we agreed, Jackie was our manager, and she did a really nice job of kind of rearranging the steps for a way that was comfortable for her. So she did a little bit more of the questions before the observation. And then because it was call coaching, was able to get them to talk about it. And then when there were things that were missed, right, the rep didn't own up to all of the things, she was able to say, well, here are some of the things I observed. And it made a lot of sense to be in that place. And so that was a lot of the feedback around Jackie's was really positive for that part.
Great, great. Any improvement areas that your group identified for either of the role players?
So we really didn't, as the group, we really didn't get to that part as much. We really had just talked about the positive at that point. So anybody can come off of mute. I know Sean was starting to talk about positives, but maybe he has some additional feedback on what she could work on. But I definitely have one that I would add if nobody else wants to come off of mute.
I would love it for each group to have at least 2 things that they noticed from either one of their folks. So take a look at your notes. Anything you identified, you don't even have to share who it was.
Yeah, I have something, Jackie, because I love you so much. I said, for me, I thought that he had mentioned twice, and this is something very just particular for him. He mentioned twice that he had a bad weekend, and so he wasn't in a right mind frame on Monday. I probably would have acknowledged that I'm so sorry that you had a tough weekend. Are you okay now? Like, are you good to move forward? So that you can make sure that he's, I don't know what day it was, if it was Wednesday, whatever, but to make sure that he can still move forward, because if he's still in a bad mind frame, maybe he needs to take the day off or the rest of the week off. But if he's not in the right mind frame or a good mind frame, he also won't take the feedback from Jackie very well either and put it to action.
That's great. One thing that I would add to that is that with the kind of rearranging of the questions, once she was able to share her observations that were a little bit more specific than what he had offered, I would kind of go back into some of those questions again, right? Like, okay, so now I observed this. Can you remember that part of it? And how could you improve on that? So I think the flow went really well, but I think there was room for additional questions after the observations.
And probably not in the spirit of time, but I
Right.
found the same thing, right? We hit 3 questions and on we went. Folks, when you've got 30 minutes instead of 5, stay in the A as long as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. How about from my group? We shared the love, right? We got to one improvement idea where we noticed that it felt like our rep was maybe a little guarded. So we said, how many positives did we hear? So I like to count those as we go. And sure enough, we hadn't heard any in that one. So I appreciate that being shared from my group. Who else in my group has something, an idea for everybody that we noticed in the role play? I do know I can just sit here all day.
I can go. One thing I noticed with next steps, you put it all on yourself as a manager.
Both of them did, didn't they?
Yeah, both was like, I'll do this. I'll send you the invite. I'll send you an email. I forget exactly what it was. But especially for, the role play with the rep, it's instead of I'll reach out to the other reps, see if we can get someone to schedule a role play, and then I'll send this by the end of the week. It's why don't you reach out to a couple of the reps that you've noticed have been successful. We can schedule a call. Just invite me to that. And then we can go from there. So have them invite you and say, can you get that out by the end of day Friday? So we could have next week planned.
I love it. Daniel, thank you for noticing that. It's really good. You guys, your goal is to walk out of every meeting with everybody else owning the action items, okay? You just put that in your pocket until we meet again, and we will have to report back on that. How many meetings can you get out of with 0 things on your plate because you have enough on your plate already? I want to tell you one other thing that I noticed from our group. For both of us, we focused more on the business than on the person. Okay. So when we were coaching Joanne, played by Emily very well, it was all about the deal, right? It wasn't as much about Emily learning why that was important and improving her skills and getting better. And then when we coached our manager, it was about, again, saving more deals versus the manager and how he interacted with and his skills on Emily, which is exactly why I brought that up earlier. It is a number 1 easy place to fall. That's what we were hired to do, except that, darn it, we changed our jobs and now we're in the people business, not in the deal business, saving deal business, hospitality business, whatever it may be. So I love the fact that we got to see it in action. And somebody in my group actually shared like, oh, wow, when you see it, and it's not you in the middle of doing it, it does help. I invite you all to try it and continue to try it in your next meetings. It makes a difference in fewer action items on your plate, in making sure you hit every point, making sure you're asking the questions like a coach, right? And your reps buy in as well. One last quick tip I was going to share with you guys here. When you have those difficult conversations that you don't have a job here anymore, or you're on write-up, or your body odor is affecting the office, which basically would just be somebody you live with at this point. I have a 4th grade boy. I've had these conversations. We call it E-coaching, and the E stands for esteem. You use the same steps. You do a little bit more preparation ahead of time, right? And those were some of those tips. So we've got a great webinar on that if anybody has that happening. By the way, there are cheat sheets in the sales bar. There's literally a grading form. So you can do these role plays. You can teach others in your office. You can grade yourself afterwards. If you're super brave, your rep can grade you. And then, by the way, if you were the leader coaching the manager, this is where, here's your cheat sheet. You can coach your managers in their delivery or use this for yourself as well. Next time we're getting together, we're talking about Own Your Day. That one's my favorite course. There's lots of different time management techniques and tips and tricks out there, but this one is built especially for sales managers. So you've heard me share tips already, like don't take the action items. It'll be full of that. as well. The Eisenhower matrix is everybody's favorite part of that, and it's going to have you looking at the requests that come into your office very differently. Our meeting is on November 5th. I'm pretty sure it's 9 a.m. Pacific. I was chatting with, who was it at the beginning of the call about that? The time zone chains always mess me up. It'll be sent to you in your calendar. It's 10 a.m. right now for Arizona, but then when everybody switches for fall, I tend to mess up a lot of meetings. So check your calendars. I'm going to stay on if anybody has questions. Otherwise, you're off 2 minutes for your next meeting. Thank you for being here. I really enjoyed the role plays. You guys did excellent.
Absolutely.
Have a great, great, great Halloween. We'll see you in November.